Hi guys, this is Andy, the BPD warrior that I'm now calling myself because I can. And I'm here today to talk about coping skills. I'm mostly going to be pulling from dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, because that's where I got most of my coping skills from. So I have not had a good 2 days. Yesterday was a really hard day. Today was a little easier, but not as good. I was involved in a conflict of personal nature. I'm not going to go into detail, but someone requested something of me, and I was already overwhelmed and swamped and felt they should have asked at a different time because they knew how much is going on in my life. So the DBT skills that I used first off was to look at the situation and check the facts. That meant looking at my interpretations. At first, was I interpreting the situation correctly, or was this as extreme as what they were asking? Well, they were kind of threatening me with something extreme, so I didn't feel like I was being extreme. I was interpreting the situation correctly, that they needed me to do this task regardless, or face the consequences. Was I catastrophizing? No. The consequences, this can move down. The consequences were pretty severe for me, so it was correct that this was a real thing. So was my emotional intensity justified? Was the volume of my emotions justified? Yeah. I kind of wanted to cry, but I couldn't. But I never got to a point of self-harm or wanting to end it all or anything like that. So maybe my emotions were like a 6, maybe, and that was justified considering what they were threatening to take from me. So I had to look at the dialectics, and if you don't know that's the basis for dialectical behavior therapy. And what dialectics means is that two things that are seemingly opposite can be true at the same time. For one, the person had the right to bring this up to me. I had said I would do this task and I hadn't done it, and I was responsible for it. On the same hand, they weren't really looking out for my best interests. This is someone who really cares about me, and they weren't considering the health consequences of this threat. They weren't considering the stress I was under. So both those things were true. They had the right to ask me to do this or face the consequences, but they also should have been a little more understanding of my situation and my illness and what is going on with me. Then I had to kind of do some radical accountability. I was responsible for doing the task. I said I would do the task, and I hadn't. Partially because I had been ill, but then there had been time before that where I should have done it. I should have already accomplished it, but I hadn't. So I needed to be accountable and realize that I had to do the task, even if right now I'm sick and that made it much more difficult to do, and I'm stressed, and I have this huge event coming up that I wanted to work on promoting. So that's kind of how the skills I used to frame the problem to make it a little easier for me to cope with. So now the distress tolerance skills, the way that I actually handled the intense emotions. First off, I was willful and didn't want to do it. And to the point that I physically could not do it, that every time I would try to attempt to do the task, my body would be like, no. I get sweaty palms and I'd start shaking and I couldn't focus. And so I actually asked for help from someone who could do the task for me, and she agreed to do it. And she's a great friend, Amanda. I love you. You're awesome. I ended up not needing her to do the task, but asking her to help me with it. It gave me a lot of relief. So I got a lot of social support from both friends and a peer specialist, which a peer specialist is a person with lived experience with a mental illness who kind of helps guide you and reframe your thinking, but doesn't give you advice like a therapist does. So I talked to a peer specialist, I talked to some friends online, and I talked to a friend on the phone, and these friends also helped validate me, which is an important skill, that my emotions were justified and that this person was asking more than they should have at this time and should have been more understanding of my emotions and how this would affect me. So I had to be, at first I was very willful, as I said, and so I needed to practice willingness and to actually do the opposite action of what I wanted to do, which was to just completely avoid the problem, which hadn't worked for me thus far. So instead of avoiding the problem, I actually was able to start attempting to tackle it just one little bit at a time, and eventually I was able to start getting into a rhythm, and then I realized it wasn't going to take as much effort as I had made it out to be, because in my head I had been catastrophizing it and making it a much bigger thing than it needed to be, and then I realized I wouldn't need the help and that I was able to do it. It took a lot of effort, and my brain's kind of foggy, I'm on medications, I'm sick, and it took a lot longer than it normally would have, and it really wore me out. I barely got any of it done yesterday, anything to show for it yesterday. I got a lot done in the background, but had barely anything to show for it, but made sure to have something to show for it. Then I practiced some self-soothing by eating some Oreos, because they're delicious, and that was a way to kind of treat myself after I had spent a lot of time working on it yesterday. My emotions were still very unsteady, so I practiced a skill to do the opposite of what my emotions were feeling, and I watched some funny videos on YouTube. I was actually watching honest trailers where they kind of lampoon on movie trailers, and that helped, but I was so exhausted. And so I did please skills, which is from DBT, which is all about taking care of your physical self, taking care of your physical illness, getting extra sleep, eating. I went to bed extra early, and I woke up late, and I took a nap today. I finished the task today. It wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it would be. That's my cat. But it still was frustrating. And now I'm having to consider using the Dear Man skill to decide to talk to the person about how they had the right to ask for this favor or face consequences, but that their timing should have been more considerate considering our relationship. And also do a pros and cons of whether that's worth it. I don't know that they'll understand. Sorry. Get him out of the way. I've got to figure out if it's worth risking our relationship, what we have so far, to point out that they should not have done that, and if that's in one of my best interests and to help the relationship best. So these are things I still needed to consider. I am doing better now that I had gotten past the hard part on yesterday. I was able to finish it up today, but I'm still having, lingering feelings that are strong that I shouldn't have been asked to do this task at this time, that I didn't feel it was justified. But I'm still using my coping skills. Hopefully me explaining how those coping skills worked helped you guys, which is contributing, which is another distress tolerance skill. So hopefully I'll have better news to report tomorrow, but keep on keeping on, BPD warriors. Let's do it.